Okay, here's the deal. We gotta break into this house, and all we have to do is steal this one VHS tape.
Which one is it?
I don't know, man. Let's just
Look at these, okay?
What's so special about this tape anyway?
You're all gonna die up here.
My apartment's haunted.
It's not haunted. I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation.
I like you.
Did you erase it?
And welcome to the Cult Cinema Circle podcast. My name is Jesse, and I'll be your host. Before we get started, please make sure you subscribe to the show on your podcatcher of choice, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to give the show 5 stars and a 1 to 2 sentence review, and tell me what you think. If you'd like to follow the show on social media, you can do so on Instagram at Cult Cinema Circle, or you can send me an email at cultcinemacircle@gmail.com. You can also follow me on Letterboxd at Jesse Kremp, JESSE-KREMP, all one word, and all social media links will be put in the show notes. Now on with the show. So on today's episode, we're going to be covering a little movie from 2012 that actually is not just one feature movie, but it is a collection of little movies, I guess. But we're going to be covering VHS from 2012. Now, my history with the VHS franchise is one of I've watched every single one of these movies. If you are not familiar with them, I'll go over it in a little bit, but these are pretty much like anthology horror movies that are done by different directors, and I'll go into a little bit about the franchise when we get into the actual episode, but I have literally seen all of these movies. VHS Beyond just came out actually, and it is currently on Shudder, as is the rest of the like from 94 onward is all on Shudder if you have that streaming service, so you can go watch them there. But yeah, I thought, why not start with the first one? And you know, listen, I think I watched this back in 2021 because that's what my Letterboxd tells me, and I gave it a 4, and I was like, okay. And then I was just recently watched it not too long ago. And, you know, listen, I don't think it's a bad movie necessarily. However, I can see the qualms that people have with this movie in particular. And the unfortunate thing is that I don't think the first iteration of this movie is the best iteration of this movie. We'll get into that, though. And I'll give you my ranking of all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I just wanted to cover this because why not? There's not really an anniversary or anything, but you know, it came out actually, you know, not too long. It came out in October of 2012. So I was like, well, we just passed spooky season, and you know, I wanted an episode to be there. And I thought, why not do VHS? Like, you know, we just had the new one come out. Like, they're going to be making a new one at some point. So might as well put it out there, I guess. But without without further ado, we're going to move into a little bit about our, film today. So let's move into it. So this film, VHS, it was released at Sundance January 22nd of 2012, and then did a limited release in the US in October 5th of 2012. This is a 116-minute movie, which I think is a little too long for it, and it made a box office of about $1.9 million. So it did go domestically and then internationally, which kind of makes up that, the gross overall. And this was released by Magnet Releasing, and it was produced by The Collective and also Bloody Disgusting. You may know I've had Horror Queers on, which they are a Bloody Disgusting podcast. I also had Rocco T. Thompson on 2 weeks ago, I believe, where he's also on the Bloody Network. So that's kind of cool too, with Lady Killers. So yeah, it's a little bit about that. So getting into the box office of this. So domestically it made about $100,000. So $100,345. Internationally it made about 1.8 million. So $1,843,942 for a worldwide gross of $1,944,287. So 1.9 million. I don't think this took a ton of money to necessarily make, because we're also looking at different directors and stuff. So there's that. On its opening weekend, it did come in at, I think, 52, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, with $36,000. Because again, this was not a movie that is. It wasn't even in theaters that long. I think it was in there for 5 or 6 weeks, and this was not one to maybe go to the theaters. Although I believe the other two did as well, and then it just kind of folded in on itself, to be honest with you. So, and then it's interesting because then the other VHS movies from Shudder, or that are on Shudder currently, it makes enough sense that they went right to streaming. They never did a theatrical release, but the first three did, which is kind of interesting. On Rotten Tomatoes, we have a 56% on the tomato meter with 107 reviews, and then a 41% from audiences with about 10,000 ratings. The critic consensus of this is an uneven collection of found footage horror films. VHS has some inventive scares, but its execution is hit or miss. So we got that. And then on Letterboxd in particular, The Voice of the People, we are looking at about a 2.8 out of 5. So again, people are kind of middling on this. If anything, I think there are folks who kind of like some of the other VHS films more than the original one in particular. So yeah, that's a little bit about the, figures of this movie, just kind of where we're at in terms of ratings. But let's talk a little bit about just the cast and crew. So we'd have to kind of break this up a little bit because of the whole fact of how this movie is made. So this has 5 different films within it. So we have, but overall, it was directed by Adam Wingard, David Bruckner, Ty West, Glenn McQuaid, Joe Swanberg, and Radio Silence, The Collective that, made Scream 5 and 6 and all that. So those are the people who did that. And yeah, so they've all kind of gone on to do their own thing. Adam Wingard, around this time, he had done, You're Next, he did right before this, actually, I believe, which is there are some people who are in You're Next who are in this film as well. But then he also went on to do The Guest with Dan Stevens and Micah Monroe, which is a fantastic movie. I just recently watched that. But he also did the remake of Blair Witch from 2016, which is not good. And also he's been involved with Godzilla vs. Kong and also Godzilla X Kong, The New Empire as well, which recently came out this year. But that's Adam Wingard. And then David Bruckner, he's been a part of doing some stuff like The Ritual, which was on Netflix a while back, The Night House, which I think is a really good movie as well, with Rebecca Hall in it. And he also did the remake of Hellraiser with the new Hell Priestess or Priest or whatever. So I actually didn't mind that remake, to be honest. So that is David Bruckner, but he's been a part of this franchise for sure as well. Ty West, who has kind of made his own thing with the X trilogy or whatever you want to call it, X, Pearl, and Maxine. But before this, he did House of the Devil, with Jocelyn Donahue, I believe. So he did that. He also did The Innkeepers after this, I believe. And he also did like one of the Cabin Fever movies, if I'm not mistaken. Not the second. He did made it to the second one or the third one, but he hates that movie apparently. So there's that. Glenn McQuaid is a Irish filmmaker. He did I Sell the Dead, which I'd never heard of before. But he got brought in for that. So I guess that's cool. And then Joe Swanberg, we'll talk about him. He also is a actor in this movie. He's in the second one as well. He's in the second short, I guess. But he comes from the mumblecore kind of film movement. So very much like where Greta Gerwig kind of came out of, and different stuff like that. So you have like Greta Gerwig, Lena Dunham's another one, a couple different people who came out of mumblecore, but that was him. And then Radio Silence, as I already kind of mentioned. So they had done viral videos, which kind of got them noticed for this. But they had done a viral video, in about 2010 or something like that. And then they've gone on to do, Radio Silence has gone on to do Ready or Not, and also Scream 5 and Scream 6, Abigail as well, which came out last year or earlier this year. I think it was last year. But yeah, so they're very well known, I guess. So yeah, that's what we're talking in terms of our directors. So they're all kind of a little different. Simon Barrett was another one as well. He wrote the wraparound story for this. He was also involved, and he was also produced at least the wraparound story, and also I think it was the fourth short in this, which is the sick thing that happened to Emily when she was younger. But yeah, so, and then of course this is produced by Brad Miska, who is like the literal like founder of Bloody Disgusting pretty much. So, pretty big deal, with that. And of course they were all involved as well. But yeah, so that's what we're looking at in terms of the stories for that. And then, yeah, the cast is kind of made up of different people, not anybody super well known. We'll go through each one, I guess, and I'll talk a little bit about them. But like, if anything, these were all directed by people who are just up and coming in the horror sphere. And then you have, and then it just kind of gets bigger and bigger as time goes on, if anything. The release of this, though, so we have, before we get into the actual stories, I'm going to go through some of this other stuff. So Trevor Groth, who's a programmer of Midnight Movies at the Sundance Film Festival, is quoted as saying, "I give this all the credit in the world because conceptually it shouldn't have worked for me. Personally, I'm bored by found footage horror films, which this is, and omnibus attempts rarely work. But this one does. It's terrifying and very well executed." And apparently 2 people fainted at the premiere in Sundance, which is kind of interesting. So Magnolia Pictures had purchased the North American rights to this film for about a little over $1 million. And so the first theatrical release began in Russia in September of 2012, and a limited release started October 5th, as I said. And then in December of 2012, it came out on DVD, Blu-ray, and digital download as well. And again, it's kind of like I already talked about the critic consensus for this. Most people say that this film is too long, which I also agree with. I think the film, especially some subsequent films, are able to do this pretty tightly within about a 90-minute, maybe a little bit more. But, this one's just a little too long for what it is. And also these segments kind of vary in quality, honestly, but they all got the same kind of budget. They all were kind of given the same resources. It was just a matter of like, give us a story pretty much. But then you have some people who really like it. You know, Empire gave this film 4 out of 5 stars, saying that the biggest twist is that it's consistently high quality, anything goes, and all of it works. The Hollywood Reporter gave it a mildly positive rating, saying that it was refreshingly, VHS promises no more than it delivers, always a plus with genre fare. And Fangoria praised the film while remarking that the mystery of why and how some of the stuff is even on VHSs to begin with was a bit of a leap. But then you have some other people who just don't like this as much. So you have Sean O'Connell from the Washington Post, who gave this a scathing review, saying that although on paper it's a clever concept and probably sounded great in a pitch meeting, it loses all the luster through some shoddy execution. And he went on to criticize the unwatchable shaky cam technique and also the rough and amateurish acting, though he did identify Swanberg's segment as the best, which is that's the sick thing that happened to Emily when she was younger. And Roger Ebert, right before he passed away, was among the critics who felt that this film was overlong. He gave this 1 out of 4 stars, and he said none of the segments are particularly compelling, strung together. It's way too much of a muchness. So, I mean, you have the detractors of this, but then, if anything, this kind of went on to have like just this crazy, like, it got legs for some reason. And not to say I do like some of the other movies, but yeah, so VHS 2 came out, the 2013 Sundance Film Festival. It was released in June of 2013 on demand. And then the third installment, that was VHS Viral, and that was trying to kind of ape on the virality of different videos that were coming out and stuff like that at that time. And that kind of was the death knell of the franchise that many people would tell you, I think. And so it kind of went away for a while, really like for more than, I think, 5 years up to that point, like literally like even a little bit more. But then, for whatever reason, Shudder, who had kind of come onto the scene by that point, they decided, like, hey, let's try to get this together, really, and get it together again. So, you know, it was a joint venture between Bloody Disgusting Films and also Shudder Original Films, and that is where we have VHS 94, and then we have VHS 99, VHS 85, and then VHS Beyond, like I was talking about earlier. And those have pretty much been produced by Shudder and also Bloody Disgusting as well, I believe. And it's just kind of a way for people to get a VHS movie coming back, you know, every year pretty much, because people want to watch them. And I get it. I do too. Like, they're interesting. And what's nice is that they're shorts. So like, you don't have to bang with all of them, but like, there are some that you're like, oh no, this is actually pretty cool. And you know, this is a good time. So, you know, that's what I think about it, at least. But yeah, I mean, interview with IndieWire, though, Brad Miska, who's a producer, like I said, he revealed the process and how they developed VHS, which really included a trust fall type of style of filmmaking. All the relationships came out of the long history of Bloody Disgusting. So he is quoted as saying, for VHS, we went to people who I have a relationship with via Bloody Disgusting, a group of trusted filmmakers who we thought would want to take part in this. They pitched us their ideas. They came to us with treatments and scripts. It was like, if you like this, go do your thing. In terms of the movie itself getting greenlit, the storyline that runs through the whole movie was something that we had originally discussed. So we just went with the decided upon streamlined story and just left the filmmakers go do their own thing, which is kind of a reverse of how you're supposed to do a movie like this. You're supposed to do that last. It becomes like a fill in the hole type project. So what can we do? What can we put here? What can we put there? You know, but what would amp it up here? So it was a living project, a living film, if you will. And I think that's kind of where tonally, this all kind of makes sense in my opinion, I guess. Like, they're all like spooky stories or whatever, or they're supposed to be like, you know, horror movies, like little horror shorts, which is cool. But I also think like, yeah, that's why there is no, but yeah, that's kind of why there is no like cohesive story here. Because it's not really supposed to be. And if anything, like, there's not supposed to be, really. But yeah, that's what I think about it, at least. But let's move into a little bit of this movie and the plot in particular. So this film is presented as an anthology of 5 short horror films built into a frame narrative, which acts as its own like 6 short horror film. And each film is linked together with the concept of found footage that are found as VHS tapes. As the series goes on, you'll find that they kind of move away from the VHS format because you're like, what the hell are these actually supposed to be in VHS? So this one, if anything, kind of at least keeps to that a little bit more than some of the subsequent movies. But let's talk about Tape 56. This is the frame narrative. And this was directed by Adam Wingard. It was written by him and Simon Barrett. So this focuses on some hooligans, Brad, Rox, Zach, and Gary, who are all named after some of the producers of this film, which is interesting. But this is a criminal gang who films their acts, kind of like a fucked up Jackass, if you will, which range from like vandalism, but also sexual assault to women. And an anonymous source, they hire them to break into an abandoned house and steal a VHS tape. And the quartet accepts, and they're eager to expand their criminal enterprises, as you're wont to do. And in the house, they break in, they find the corpse of an old man who is sitting in front of several televisions. And while his friends roam the house, Brad stays with the corpse to watch a tape left in the VCR. Brad, I believe, is played by Adam Wingard. I will say right now, this framing device sucks. It's awful. I don't like it a whole lot. I was never much for like the Jackass type of like reality TV or like whatever it was kind of a thing, and this is just like way worse than that. At least with the Jackass guys, like you can tell that they like really are each other's friends. Like, they kind of it's there's some people who really like love the Jackass guys and think that they're really lovable and like all this stuff, and I don't take that away from anybody, but like this one is just, you are just literally wanting these guys to fucking die, like honestly. And I get it, because so this for me is kind of like the worst one in my opinion, because, and especially as time goes on with these wraparound stories, sometimes you're like, bitch, this is not very good. But this one in particular, I'm like, no. Plus it's the other big thing about this movie especially is that all but one of these segments, just the way they treat women in these stories is just kind of a little weird. And it's just very like gazy, if anything, very male gazy, and don't exactly love that. I think if anything, like that can definitely show like what a character is supposed to be like. And it just adds to you wanting to kind of see them like perish or to get their comeuppance and all this. But especially in some of the other films of this series, you kind of see that fall away a little bit, which is a positive. But in this one, it's definitely just fucking broy as hell, and it's kind of annoying to watch a little bit. But yeah, that's my opinion at least. But yeah, I hated Tapes 56, but I would say that's probably my 6th one, if you will. But let's move into the actual other films, right? So here's Amateur Night. This was directed by David Bruckner, and it was written by him and also Nicholas Tukowski, who is actually in this little film as the bartender at the bar. But these are about 3 friends, Shane, Patrick, and Clint. They rent a motel room in some undisclosed city to bring women back for sexual intercourse. And so Clint wears glasses that have been outfitted with a little hidden camera and a microphone to allow them to turn these like planned encounters into like amateur porn videos, which is illegal. So that's not great. That's kind of awful. And so they're going out doing their bro ass thing or whatever. And while they are bar hopping in the local town, Clint meets Lily, a mysterious young woman who appears unusually shy and only says, "I like you." She doesn't really say anything else. And in addition to Lily, the friends get another young woman, Lisa, to come to their room. And so Shane, one of the friends, attempts to have sex with Lisa, but she passes out. And Patrick, who is like the really annoying friend, he's just like laughing through the whole thing. he kind of just discourages him and Clint, really. They're both discouraging. Like, no, she's done, man. You can't be doing this. It's still awful, but there's that. So then Lily, awkwardly, she seduces Clint until Shane, who's the other friend who was trying to have sex with Lisa, comes onto her instead. And so, and again, it's just kind of, so she gets stripped down to like literally naked. And Clint notices that Lily has some clawed and scaly feet as she undresses. But of course, Shane and Patrick are like completely oblivious to this. And Shane so Lily pushes Shane onto his back and tries to undress Clint because he's like, they want to have a three-way. Lily wants to initiate the three-way. It's very enthusiastic consent, if anything. She does want to do this once she gets into the mood, which is cool. But overwhelmed, though, Clint's like, he's got to go in the bathroom. He's kind of has to collect himself. He's just like, bro, I can't do this. Oh, God. Because he's kind of the one we see where he's like not really about trying to do any of this, really. He's just not into it. And Patrick attempts to take Clint's spot. However, Lily is not having that shit because she made it very clear that she does not like him. And moments later, Patrick bursts into the bathroom after he literally takes all of his clothes off and is trying to like be with this girl with his friend. And he's claiming that Lily bit him. And so Clint and Patrick, they approach Lily and she suddenly spouts fangs. And then she attacks and kills Shane. Clint hides in the bathroom while Patrick, who is armed naked with a shower curtain rod. I will say it's always appreciated, at least in this movie and in VHS 2. There's some hanging of dong, which is always really nice. I love to see it. But anyway. But they return to the bedroom and Clint decides he's trying to wake up Lisa while Patrick is confronting Lily with the shower rod. She kills him, though. She's like sucking his blood out of him. And she also rips off his like the dick and balls, which is like iconic. And Clint runs out. He then falls down a staircase when he's trying to escape and he breaks his wrist. You see the bone. It's really gross. But then Clint runs out. And anyway, so Lily now with her face bearing like a really horrible split down the middle, which you can see there's like a line down her face a little bit, but you don't know why that is. You're just like, what the hell is that? Did she just have like a scar, I guess? But whatever. She catches up to Clint and again, she's like, I like you. And she's trying to perform fellatio on him. And Clint, because, his wrist is literally broken. And also he's literally dealing with a succubus. He's just like, he's not getting hard, baby. He's just not. And she is beginning to cry and growl angrily. Girl, I get it. Like, you just wanted some dick. So there's that. So then Clint, he's just like in complete pain. He is begging some bystanders to help him until, unfortunately, he is suddenly lifted into the sky by Lily, who is transformed into a winged creature and revealed to be a succubus on the hunt for a mate. And the glasses fall off of Clint's face and hit the ground as the footage ends. So for me, at least, I don't love like the kind of inciting incident of this whole short or whatever. I get that it's just not for everybody. However, I will say I do love, and it is kind of nice to see Lily kind of show these men what's what, if anything. And I really appreciate that. So this is actually, I think, my second rated one. Like, I would put this at number 2 for my rating of this, because I don't know, there's just something about that one guy getting his balls ripped off and then she's trying to like blow Clint and like not doing anything. Like, I don't know, it's pretty cool, and I like it for what it is, and I tend to enjoy it. But yeah, that's and they also turned this into a full feature-length film called Siren from 2016. I've not seen that. I don't really know how you're going to turn that into I don't think it'll probably be very good, but who knows? Yeah, go tell me in the comments or go tell me in email or whatever, whether it's good or not, I guess. But anyway. So then you are back at tape 56. So back in the frame narrative, Rox discovers that Brad has now disappeared. So we're assuming he's dead now. And in the basement, Zach and Gary, they find hundreds of unmarked videotapes and they collect all of them to make sure that they're going to get the right one because they don't exactly know which one they have to actually get. And as a glimpse of a strange figure walks off, Rox puts another tape into the VCR and watches it. So this is our next segment is called Second Honeymoon. This was both written and directed by Ty West, like I said, from the X trilogy, X, Pearl, and Maxine. So this is about a married couple, Sam, who's played by Joe Swanberg, who did the fourth short within this movie, but also has come from Mumblecore, like I talked about. And Stephanie. Stephanie is played by Sophia Takal, if you know who that name. She is the person who did, I believe, New Year, New You, which was a Hulu Into the Dark original that they did for, Hulu's little thing that they did with horror. She is also the person who directed, I think helped also co-write a little bit of the Black Christmas 2019 remake, which, as you may already know, if you've listened to any of the other episodes, I don't exactly like that movie. I do not really think it's Sophia Takal's fault, though, but, that's just me. But yes, this is before she ever did any of that and before she became a director or anything. She was an actress and she was doing this. So they are traveling down Route 66 for a honeymoon in Arizona. I guess we're to assume that we don't actually know where they're from, to be honest. They very well could be from the West Coast, but who knows? They could be from wherever the goddamn hell. So they're documenting this trip by Stephanie with a camera. That night, they go to a Wild West themed attraction, which is a real attraction. And it's Stephanie gets a prediction from a mechanized fortune teller, which is also a prospector or whatever. So it claims that she will be happily reunited with a loved one and that she is very trusting and is easily taken advantage of. So that's kind of weird. But what ends up happening, so you kind of see their different, dynamics going on. So you are to assume that okay, well, they're a married couple and whatever, right? And they're just kind of doing the couple thing. It's nothing too crazy. But we do see that a strange person, because they settle into their motel room and that's all fine and well. And they end up she kind of shows that the bed is kind of gross. But again, it's a motel, what do you expect? And so we do see though that a strange person grabs the camera, because they do have this thing where a strange young woman comes to their motel room and is trying to see if they can get a ride, I guess. But it's kind of weird because they're it's in the middle of the night, or it's close to it's dark. So why are you asking for a ride tomorrow, I guess, the night before? It's a little weird. But anyway, so the couple, Sam is just nah, we're not doing that for you. And so in the middle of the night, though, as I was saying, while the couple is asleep, you see that there is an intruder that breaks into the room. We see that they have a switchblade and they caress Stephanie's almost bare ass, because she is wearing underwear, but you see them caress it with that. We see that I think $20 or no, $100 actually. Well, yeah, I just saw 20, but it was $100 was taken out of Sam's wallet. They also dip his toothbrush into the toilet without him knowing. It was technically a clean toilet, but still the principle stands. But yeah, and we see that it's we don't know who it is exactly. We are maybe to assume that it might be a woman, but we don't know. But again, it's just they already had a strange woman encounter. They kind of got her on video a little bit, just in the shadows. But so we're to maybe assume that it's just maybe the same woman or whatever it is. But an intruder is doing some weird shit, right? So because they have some exchanges. So Sam and Stephanie, they have an exchange of Sam confronts Stephanie about did you take money from me? And she's like, no, I have my own money. Like, I didn't take anything from you. And she's just, saying that she didn't do anything. She's been with him the whole time. Like, how could she have done anything different or whatever? And the next day they go visit the Grand Canyon, which was part of their trip, of course. And Sam notices like the missing money, like I talked about. And later that night, though, the intruder enters back into the room, and we see that we don't see anything with Stephanie, but instead we see Sam getting pretty much repeatedly stabbed in the neck as he just chokes to death on his blood. And the camera shows the intruder, so this woman from earlier, who is wearing a kind of like Alice Sweet Alice mask, or like a Jawbreaker mask, if you know, you know. But yeah, it's like a porcelain mask or whatever, but it looks like a porcelain doll, whatever. But it's revealed to be Stephanie's lover, her lesbian lover. And then they drive away pretty much, and they are Stephanie is asking if the recording was erased. So yeah, I guess the whole idea is that Stephanie had part of this trip planned where like she knew that she was going to get her husband killed, and that she was going to escape with her lesbian lover. For me, at least, like, I actually didn't mind this one as much. I think there's some people who are like, oh my God, I do not really like this short or whatever. But in my opinion, I actually didn't mind this short. I think I put it like number 3, probably, in my opinion. I really think it was like a perfectly fine thing. And I think also when you watch it back again, there's just certain things that you see where you're just like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And I personally think that Stephanie was in on it. She was obviously in on it to a point, but like, I think she literally knew from the time that they were doing this trip, she knew that what was going to happen, obviously. Like, this was all planned out. So, she's just kind of playing along and all this. So yeah, it's very much like in a way it feels like a weird kind of true crime thing, right? It feels like a thing of like you're gonna have like this footage where this happened or whatever, and then it's like, and the guy was found dead in a motel room, and then Stephanie was nowhere to be found or whatever, that kind of a thing. And so yeah, I just thought it was kind of interesting, even though I'm not big on true crime, but this is obviously not true crime, but still it gives you those vibes a little bit, which is interesting. Yeah. But yeah, I didn't mind this. So I gave it, it was my 3rd, if anything. So I liked it. We're back at Tape 56. So then Rox is confused about what he just watched, and he fails to notice that the corpse behind him of the dead guy is now gone. And meanwhile, in the basement, though, Zach and Gary, they are considering making copies of the required tape to get extra money so they could sell it or whatever. But then we move into the short of Tuesday the 17th. So this was done by Glenn McQuaid, and also he wrote this as well. So this one, I will tell you right now, it is, I think, my least favorite, but I'll get to that in a minute. So childhood friends, Joey, Spider, and Samantha, they accompany their new friend, Wendy, who shockingly looks a little like Danielle Harris a little bit. And like Spider is like our kind of geeky guy. Joey is like our kind of jock guy. And Samantha is kind of our dumb blonde, if you will. But we see like Wendy's going on this annual trip to a lake in a nearby forest. And Wendy leads the way, and she mentions that a, quote, accident took her friends' lives. I think the previous year or something like that. So Joey's digital camera that he has, it pans certain empty areas and found it's picking up glitched images of like mutilated bodies that are captured on this footage. So you can't see them at the time, I guess, but like you see them after the fact. And so when they discover a mutilated pig in the woods, Wendy declares that everybody's going to die. You're all going to fucking die out here. And so the group decides to smoke some weed, as you do, near the lake. And Wendy explains that a murderer killed many people here, but the group laughs it off as a joke. And Spider and Samantha, they leave for a break until the latter, Samantha, is suddenly killed when a knife is thrown at her face. And Spider attempts to run from this killer, but is also stabbed. And we find that the killer is revealed to be like a glitched figure with its head obscured by like tracking errors. So this is kind of like a sort of video Slender Man, if you will, I guess. It doesn't look like Slender Man, but you get the idea. Like it's kind of that kind of a thing. It's not an actual physical killer. It's like a killer that is within the videotape or whatever, or like you don't see him unless you are having this on video, which is the whole reason of why you're doing this. So Wendy reveals to Joey that she's the only survivor after all of her friends were killed at the lake, and she reveals that she used this group to bait and kill the murderer. So we're to call them the Glitch, I guess. So the Glitch then walks up behind Joey, slits his throat, and Wendy uses the Glitch she lures the Glitch into a pit trap and then like a bear trap, which briefly like stops them. And she films the Glitch up close, but it slashes her hand before Wendy then flees and records just a warning to stay away from the lake. And Wendy finds a dying Joey, and the Glitch confronts her before another booby trap impales it. And she's just like, ha ha ha, bitch. And then she gloats and walks away. She looks back and she notices that the Glitch is gone, and it ambushes Wendy. It beats her to death with the camera and then disembowels her. And Wendy's corpse twitches and shudders violently. And then the camera glitches out as the footage ends. So obviously this is a take on something like Friday the 13th. It's Tuesday the 17th. But in my opinion, this is at the bottom of my list. Like I said, I just didn't think this was all that well done at all. I didn't really care about the Glitch killer. I was kind of like, okay, cool, I guess. But like, I just was not really into it personally. I thought the acting in this was really not all that great. I mean, I know all over the place, like, you know, the acting with this, but this very particularly was not all that good. So that's just my opinion. Yeah, and I just really didn't care. I mean, it was kind of cool that they had the practical effects and like, you know, all this kind of shit. Although I think there is some CG in here a little bit with some of the kills. But like the disembowelment was, I guess, kind of cool, but like I would not recommend watching this one. Like, I don't really care much about it. I mean, if you're watching VHS, obviously you've already seen it, but like this is the bottom for me personally. I just really didn't like it a whole lot. That's just my opinion, but you know, it wasn't that good. And plus also it's like the slasher one, you know, like the first one is like obviously a succubus story. The second is sort of like this sort of kind of footage that you'd find for like a crime that would happen. And it was like a kind of a lover's tryst, if you will. This one is very much kind of aping on like slasher films and all this. Obviously the title is part of that, but I really wasn't a big fan of that. And I just don't know. I don't think it was very well done. So, but that's just my thought. And then we're back on tape 56, which again, I also didn't like a whole lot. So I guess if anything, maybe this is the bottom, like I said, and then maybe it goes Tuesday the 17th. Sure. The corpse has returned back to the room, but now Rox has disappeared, and Zach and Gary are now confused as to where their friends have now gone. And Gary then tells Zach to look through these tapes, and Zach complies to this. So the next thing they watch is The Sick Thing That Happened to Emily When She Was Younger. This was directed by Joe Swanberg, who played Sam in the Second Honeymoon little short. It was written by Simon Barrett. So this one is kind of a Screen Life thing. So think like Unfriended or The Den, which also came out like 2 years after this, and that kind of thing. Screen Life, if you will, or Host from 2020, very much that. But yeah, so we have James, who's an aspiring doctor, and he is talking to his girlfriend, Emily, through video chat. And he's being told about a strange bump that's on her arm and how it reminds her of an accident that she had when she was younger. So after Emily shows James her new apartment, because she's a student, I guess, she hears some noises outside of her door. So like a ghostly childlike entity then rushes into her room, and we're like, oh my God, what's going on? And slams the door and gives this little scare. And it leads Emily to believe that her apartment is haunted by ghosts. So she's just kind of freaked out by that. So she has another encounter, though, with the entity, because each one of these video chats with James and Emily, you have this, kind of thing that's the incident throughout. Emily questions her landlord, and he claims that no children had ever lived in that complex, nor has anybody died in the complex either. So maybe that's not haunted, really. But during their next chat, though, with James, Emily is attempting to cut into her bump to find out what's going on. Like, she's literally using just like a knife, and she's using almost like one of those like forks that you use at like Thanksgiving or Christmas for like, turkey or ham or whatever. You're just like, what the fuck, dude? What are you doing? So that's all, there. And she's trying to find out what it is, but James is urging her to stop doing that to avoid an infection, because he is going to be a doctor. And he promises to check on it in a few weeks when he's going to visit her. So then the next night, though, Emily, she carries her laptop to have James like look out for this entity, pretty much. So we see that 2 more entities appear and they knock Emily unconscious. And then when they knock her unconscious, we see that James comes into the apartment. And we're like, wait, what the hell is going on here? Because we're thinking like they're in a long distance relationship. She must live in, New York or something like that, or some city. And he's like some other place where it's very undisclosed, obviously. But it's supposed to be anywhere USA, really. But we find out, though, is that these entities who look like children are actually aliens that watch as James surgically removes a fetus from the torso of Emily. And they've been using her as an incubator for alien-human hybrids. So James asks, like, the aliens, like, how much do they plan to do this, or how much longer do they plan to do this to Emily? And he remarks that she may not survive this much more, as she has noticed like the tracking device in her arm. And so anyway, what happens is that the aliens erase her memory, and James has to now break her bone to like, make this look like an accident. And so in the next chat we see after this, once we find out what's actually gone on, their next chat, Emily, who is like very badly injured, they are made to believe that they sustained these injuries after wandering into traffic in like a fugue state, like a catatonic state. And so she says that the doctor that James recommended diagnosed her as a schizoaffective, and she tearfully says that James deserves a better, more normal girlfriend, and he assures Emily that she's the only person that he wants to be with as their call ends. And I think Helen Rogers, who plays Emily, does a pretty good job at playing this character. She's very cute, and we do see this. She reminds me of like somebody I went to school with, like in college, for example. It kind of reminds me a little bit, who also had like a long distance boyfriend that they talked to before, and they talked with on Skype before, which I kind of remember. But anyway, we then see, though, that James begins a new call with a different woman who also has a bump on their arm, and believes that, he is her boyfriend. As the footage ends, so we see that it's not only Emily that he's with, it's other women who he's also doing this with as well. I will also mention that James just readily lets Emily and also this girl who he's talking with as well we gotta see the tits, you know what I mean? Like, this is VHS, the first movie, like we gotta see them tits. So that's kind of a weird thing. I mean, even if anything, I mean, like, yes, they're in a relationship, quote unquote, but when you find out what's actually going on, you're kind of like, oh, that's fucking weird, like, ew, gross. So, yeah, it's just one of those things. Now, for me, this one, I think for me at least, I think I put this probably, maybe like third or something like that. Let me look real quick at my little thing. Yeah, I think I put this like above Tuesday the 17th. So below Second Honeymoon, but above Tuesday the 17th. I think, Emily is a good actress. I like her, but overall, like, I wasn't really blown away by this. It does have a really cool tactile effect where she's digging into her skin and stuff, but overall, I wasn't like blown away by this. Personally, I really didn't care a ton. So that's just my opinion on that. So then we come back to the interlude with the epilogue, really, of tape 56, and Gary returns. Both Zach and this corpse have now disappeared, so Gary is the only one left, and they search upstairs and they find the decapitated remains of his friends. He is then suddenly attacked by this zombified corpse, and fleeing downstairs, Gary falls, he twists his ankle, he's killed by this zombie in the room. And then the VCR actually plays the last tape all by itself. And so this last tape is called 10/31/98. So Halloween 1998. And so this was written and directed by Radio Silence, who is, of course, Matt Bettinelli Olpin, Tyler Gillette, and also Chad Villela. So Radio Silence is Matt Bettinelli Olpin, Tyler Gillette, and also Chad Villela. Justin Martinez was also part of Radio Silence. However, he is no longer in there. But he is also a part of the VHS series moving forward as well. So he actually just did VHS Beyond, I believe. But he's been involved with the series as time's gone on, which makes no sense. And so this one is about a group of friends. So you have Tyler, Chad, Matt, and Paul. So they all use their real names except for Justin, I guess, if that is supposed to be Justin. I don't actually know if it is, but whatever. Anyway, on Halloween night in 1998, these four friends, they head out to a Halloween party that they find out about. And they end up going to the wrong address, though, because it's not a party going on. And it's an abandoned house, and they're believing that really they're the first ones to arrive, actually. And it's like this big ass house, right? So the quartet, they sneak inside and they begin experiencing like some weird paranormal phenomena. They just kind of dismiss it though as like a haunted house attraction, because again, it's Halloween. And they have some fun with it. So that's kind of Radio Silence's things, especially. It's like kind of average guys who just kind of get themselves a little in over their head, if you will. But they're, trying to make the best of it, if you will. So then they end up discovering the house. They're trying to like figure out more about it. And they end up going into the attic of this house because they hear people here. They hear people and they're like, what's going on here? So they end up going into the attic, and the quartet finds several men who are gathered around a woman who is suspended from the rafters. They're reenacting an exorcism, and they these four idiots, they join in with the chanting that the men are doing, which just alerts their presence to the men. And these men are shouting angrily at the guys before physically assaulting the woman, until they are suddenly pulled into the darkness by like an unseen force. And as more violent paranormal phenomena starts to happen, the foursome, leave, but then they go back to the house to try to rescue the woman, who they, untie and they lead to safety. And it's like really cool looking. They definitely did some like CG within this a little bit, but also like I thought they did a really cool job at just like making this like kind of all fucking crazy. Obviously everything's like, they had to do CGI for like, they have like dishes like flying over the place and like things just like levitating, but like I thought it was kind of cool. And the entire house comes to life with poltergeists, and the quartet get into their car, and the woman are there with, they drive away, and the car abruptly then stops on some railroad tracks, and the woman disappears. She reappears into the street before, then walking amongst a flock of birds or whatever. So they realize that they are on the train tracks. A woman is actually a witch, I guess. So they maybe shouldn't have saved her, but whatever. They try to get off the train tracks though, and they're unable to do so. And instead, the train then smashes into their car, killing them all inside, when this footage ends. Now, I will also say, too, this is another thing that Radio Silence did. They had this actual ending, but then they did a joke ending. It was done in one take by Radio Silence, where the doors are actually unlocked and the quartet get away just before the train actually smashes into the car. The quartet just walk away, and they talk about how much fun they've had, what a crazy night it was, and everything. And meanwhile, the literal car just like gets hit by a train and it explodes behind them, which I think that would have been a really fun one too, to kind of have. So yeah, I think for me at least, you know, many people have like their own opinion on radio silence and their own kind of like films and stuff like that. I myself, like, I didn't mind Ready or Not. I thought it was a perfectly fine movie for what it is. I am not the hugest on Scream 5 and Scream 6, in my opinion, and I have not watched Abigail yet, so don't really know. But I mean, if anything, you know, I'm glad that these like little horror nerds or something are able to they're able to like do some stuff with some money, and like they obviously have a love for the genre, so I appreciate that. And in my opinion, I really like this one. This is my number one for the VHS movie. I just really liked it. I thought it was like a fun little movie. It had some comedy beats in it, but it also like is kind of scary. And it's just like weird and unsettling. So I did generally like this. I also liked how they have a joke take as well, where it would have been like a more like kind of tongue-in-cheek ending, if you will. So I kind of enjoyed that, if anything. But yeah, and that is kind of all together what VHS is, and then it just ends, and then we go right to you know, our credits, and that's really it. So then this movie spawned 2 and 3 Viral, and then it came back for a couple different movies, and it's still going to keep going, I feel like. And you know, I guess if anything, so as I stated with my with my ranking, so my ranking is from bottom to top. So I would say probably Tape 56 is like at my bottom at number 6, and then number 5 is Tuesday the 17th. I then have The Sick Thing That Happened to Emily When She Was Younger. I then have Second Honeymoon. I then have Amateur Night, and then 10/31/98. So that is what my ranking is from bottom to top. So yeah, but in my opinion, at least, I think this movie for me, this particular film, it went from a 4 to a 3 for me, but I am still somebody who I still generally like this movie. I think it is just something where, whether or not you like it or not, I guess is, you know, your mileage will vary on it, but I think it is an interesting, it's, if anything, an interesting concept, you know, for this. Like, found footage is definitely something where Paranormal Activity definitely really kind of shepherded having this like found footage sort of thing going on, of course. And so I just think like having this movie, you know, hit the way it did, I just think it's cool because like there is this like, you can watch these shorts, they're all from different people, which is cool, and there's different styles, which is kind of interesting, and it's just really interesting to see what these different horror filmmakers can kind of do, and I always just think that's like really, that's really boss. Like, I just think that's nice. And if anything, the reason I think it's had this kind of like, you know, legacy, or it has this cult following, if you will, or whatever, has really just been like the fandom behind it. You know, I think people want to feel something familiar, and they want to see something that they just tend to bang with. And I think this movie really started that for a lot of people, and it's kind of brought people into the fold, if you will. And I think, like, if anything, it's cool that Bloody Disgusting was able to be able to make something like this, and to be able to be a shepherd with that. And I like that. And this series, for better or worse, you know, I generally like it, and I will probably keep watching them until they stop making them, I guess. I know there's some people who are just like, girl, this needs to stop, it needs to end, but I am right there on the train, just being like, bitch, I'm here. Like, I'm not opposed to it. You know, I watched VHS Beyond on Shudder just recently, and I thought it was cool, you know, and so I am that person where I'll just like, nope, I'm gonna watch this. I'm gonna put it on, and I'm just gonna do it. And it's kind of cool that it was able to come back, I guess, because people still wanted it, you know, and because Viral really did kill it, honestly. And you know, people maybe like Viral sometimes, maybe some people like it, I don't really like it, but you know, it's kind of cool that they were able to bring this back and be able to kind of bring a new fandom to it as well, because these first three films, you know, I mean, were again the early 2010s, and then you have in 2021 they started with, you know, VHS 94 and everything, so you're getting a different a fan base coming in, which is cool. And now you're having people watch this again and like start from the beginning and all this, and then you're getting to see how like Ty West did one of these and Radio Silence did one of these, and like people who had not hit quite yet in terms of like some big stuff that they would end up doing. I just think that's really cool as well. And, you know, yeah, I would definitely recommend, if you're at all interested in watching a horror anthology or anything like that, I would recommend checking out VHS if you have not already done so. If anything, if you want to start with VHS 2, maybe if you want to. However, I do think just watching this one also would be fine. Just know it's kind of bro-y, it's kind of male gazy, you know, and you might just be like, bleh, you know. But I think overall, like, I do think this movie is a good time. I generally like the series as a whole. I get into those, so that's just what I think about that. But yeah, I think that's all I really have to say about VHS right now. Right now, at least from when I watched this is on Prime Video. They do kind of make the rounds different places. I've seen it on Tubi before. Of course, like I said, you have Prime Video right now. You can just see where it's streaming normally. And then the same thing goes with like VHS 2 and Viral as well. VHS Viral. They were all on Hulu at one point, so they might come back to Hulu at some point. And yeah, and then if you want to, or even if you want to just like, if you want to get Shudder, you can literally watch everything VHS 94 onward on Shudder, which is nice as well. Because what's nice about it is that you do not necessarily need to start from VHS. You can literally start from just like VHS 94 and just look at the different years that they do, as opposed to watching, you know, VHS 1, 2, and then Viral. So yeah. But I think that brings us to a close, though. But as stated before, of course, you know, please follow on social media and, you know, rate on your podcatcher of choice, leave me a review, all that good stuff like you heard in the beginning of the episode. And yeah, so, but for next week, though, we're going to do a little film because next week technically is a Thanksgiving week. It is the week of Thanksgiving. So I decided I'm going to do a little film, and this should be coming as no surprise to anybody. We're deciding to go a little bit into Thanksgiving horror, but not that kind of Thanksgiving horror. Oh, no. We are going to be covering a little film from 1987 called Blood Rage. So if you don't know what Blood Rage is, it is a really low budget horror film from like the 80s. Like I said, it is a Thanksgiving horror film about some evil twins, and you know, it goes a little off the rails. I'm going to have a great guest for that as well. So that was a super fun conversation to have. So yeah, but that's what you can have to look forward to with Blood Rage. I kind of like that movie for it being a stupid little low budget film, if anything. But yeah, it's a good time. But and I think that's everything. But thank you so much for taking the time to listen to the Cult Cinema Circle podcast. And remember, I like you. Take care. Bye.